All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's start the, what is today? February 21st meeting of Hewitt. And we'll start that, Peggy, if you would, well, instead of a call to order, why don't we start with Mr. Don Rocha on that end? We'll give our names, and if you can record that. Thank you.
Don Rocha, Director of Parks and Recreation.
Good morning, Joe Zintek, Director, Consumer and Environmental Protection Agency.
My name is Harry Freitas. I'm the Director of the Roads and Airports Department here at the county.
Jacqueline Onshano, Director of Planning and Development.
Mike Wasserman, District 1 Supervisor.
County Supervisor Joe Simidian, 5th District and Chair of the Board.
Gary Hersig, Deputy County Executive, sitting in for Sylvia Gallegos.
Elizabeth Pianca, Lead Deputy County Counsel, sitting in for Assistant County Counsel Steve Mitra.
Thank you. And before we proceed to public comment, I just want to make an announcement for the record, and I'll mention it again when we hit consent. But next meeting is on Friday, March 15th at 9:30 a.m. A previous notice that went out had a little part of that incorrect. The correct date, date, and time is Friday, March 15th at 9:30 a.m. in these same chambers. And Supervisor, when we get to consent item, because that date and time is also in there, I'll make that clear as well. With that, we'll move on to public comment, which is an opportunity for anyone to speak about anything not on today's agenda. In order to do that, we ask you to fill out a speaker card, which are right over here. Put your information. Clerk Peggy will pick them up, bring them over here, and we'll address them in numerical order. If you wish to speak to any of the items on the consent calendar, which I'm guessing will be items 4, 7, and 9 today, you can do so under 3 minutes to speak on any or all of those, but that's the cumulative amount of time you have to do that regarding consent items. And I've got public comment. I'm going to call up Susan Bassey and Scott Largent to come up under public comment. You'll have 3 minutes each. This will be your opportunity to speak about anything not on today's agenda.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Susan Bassey. I'm a local publisher. I'm affiliated with the media, and I am pushing to get local reporting back in our community. Because when we don't have local reporting, we don't have transparency. So in the spirit of discussing about things that are not immediately before you today, I'd like to tell you that one of my sources, who was the spouse of the woman who was raped in San Martin recently, when the district attorney released the rapist and returned him to his tent, the husband had to look at a chair that his wife had been raped in that was placed outside the homeless person's tent. He went to the Roads and Airports Department, and that's why I'm addressing you here in this meeting, and he tried for days to get rid of the homeless man's encampment, which was illegally placed after he had been rearrested. That arrest happened after Jeff Rosen's office had a meeting with a reporter and Sean Webby. Sean Webby is the PIO, Public Information Officer for the District Attorney's Office. I have obtained public records that show the district attorney and the PIO have been engaged in conduct that results in the chilling of protesting and of speech and also of issues related to the free press. It is very important that these stories get told. It is important that you all start being held accountable and that you start listening to the people in our community about what is going on. Because this committee is related to housing, I also want to share with you that there is a broad investigation that has been going on for over 5 years and now has national media attention related to the taking of property from people involved in our divorces. Over 90% of people in our area who are high asset divorce cases start out with a home and a house and a family. When they end up in our family courts, they're assigned to private judges, which are secreted proceedings, and those proceedings are left out of public view. Houses are being converted. 2 days ago, the United States Supreme Court ruled that states may not illegally impose fines, sanctions, and fees. And we are doing that off the radar in these private judging appointments. Joe Simidian, I have numerous public comments where people have come to you about the courts, and you have repeatedly said the issues of the courts are not under the purview of the supervisors. I disagree. Public corruption and issues that are going on in our courts are exactly before you. It is before you to manage and supervise those individuals. William Dancer was removed from the bench for traffic court fixing. He was fixing tickets for Los Gatos police officers, Mike Wasserman, and that was around the time that you were involved in politics in Los Gatos. And now we have that going on in our family courts. It's systemic, you aren't looking, and all of you need to start paying attention, because now the media is here, and we're going to start paying attention. We're going to hold you accountable personally, we're going to report on it, we're going to name your names. And when you leave a rapist
very
chair
much.
out in public view, we're going to call that out.
Thank you. Scott, you're up.
Okay, ready when you are, Peggy. Welcome to the team. All right, good morning, everyone. Scott Largent. I'm a little closer now. I'm kind of off the Alameda over there. I decided that I could probably get here in about 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It turned out to be a little longer than that, and I'm not in the best shape, but I still tried to do it, and I made it. So I kept running and running and running. You know, when Susan's up here talking, Joe, you know, this is public comment here, and I would appreciate it. I know you're getting up to speed now on the housing gig here. Maybe you could look her in the eye. Maybe you could try to pay attention to her and not do your homework before the book reports due up there. You continue to turn a blind eye, Joe. And now that you're on this housing committee here, I'm wondering if we're going to pull the same scam that you did with the jail. Jail matrix of disillusion. Are we going to have the housing and homeless matrix of disillusion? I'm not too sure. Joe, I would have wanted you to have gotten involved when I was having problems protesting at family court. You set up there, Big Daddy Joe said, hey, I'm going to replicate the document. I'm going to get involved. I'm going to have county council figure it out. I'm going to figure out why this young man keeps getting arrested out in front of our family courts fighting for his kid. I had expected you to do something, and I really thought that fire got lit underneath you to do it. You never called me. You never had staff reach out. You never had James Williams reach out to me. You didn't do anything at all, Joe. You have power, Joe. You do ignore everything that's going on with people like me on the lower end of things, but you do have power. You could make a statement out there at one of your little press conferences that you do out there and say that you don't tolerate people getting arrested for exercising their First Amendment rights. Are you going to do the same thing when these good men and women, these construction workers right here, the good men and women that are in a union, when they start getting ticked off, when they're out there fighting for their kids, what are you going to do to them? Are you going to turn a blind eye to them? I don't really think they're going to tolerate it. I know I'm one person out there with a megaphone, but I'm somebody that was robbed for 2 years out of my child's life. This DA's office, these courts would not enforce my visitation order. Twice a week for 5 hours, I should have been able to see my kid. That's a massive gap, Joe. You have children. Could you imagine that happening to you? I've done everything right, Joe, and this system has absolutely screwed me. Please stand up for people like me. I'm confused why you don't do it. Your staff turned a blind eye the first time I came up into your office. I begged and pleaded. I thought Big Daddy Joe's talking about surveillance and courts. He'll be the right person to do something. You're a failure, Joe Simidian.
Microphone, there we go. That concludes public comment. We now move on to item number 3, which is approval of the consent calendar. Supervisor Simidian, we currently have items 10 through 17 on consent. Do you have any additions? If not, I have some suggestions.
I'll wait for your suggestions.
Thank you. I would suggest that we add items number 4, 7, and 9 to consent as well, if that's agreeable with you.
It is.
Thank you. That said, Peggy, we have 4, 7, and 9 added to the consent calendar that was published, including items 10 through 17. And again, for the record, item 17, let's see, was talking about, within the consent was regarding meetings. And again, the next meeting is Friday, March 15th at 9:30 a.m. And with that, we don't have any speaker cards. You're submitting a card on one of those items under consent? Okay, thank you. All right, Ms. Bassey, come on up. The timer goes to 2 minutes for this and future items here. and you're going to speak on items either 4, 7, 9, and 10 through 17.
Thank you. I'd like to,
Excuse me, 1 minute. We'll get Peggy, get the timer going at 2 minutes. Reset. Super. All right, please begin.
so it's the job of the Free Press to watch you. And it is your job to watch us giving you stories and information that you might not otherwise have. So I'm going to speak to item number 11, the noise report from the Roads and Airports Department. And I'm going to speak about taxpayer waste. I recently reviewed the court files in a file that the city of San Jose had brought against an individual for using a megaphone outside the police department protesting the illegal seizure of personal property and motorhomes. And this report went on to say that the people who worked inside the police department, including people who worked in the sexual assault unit, murders and gangs, and really serious crimes, were offended by the megaphoning. I witnessed a video where an individual deputy detective who is assigned to murders was in the bushes monitoring with a $20 device the noise level for the megaphone, which was then used in a court proceeding where there were multiple attorneys for the city of San Jose. As he was monitoring that, an airplane flew over and was probably 5,000 times louder than the megaphone. We cannot give airplanes a free pass and block our citizens from speech. That is a problem. So as you look at these readings, be mindful of what airplanes do to disturb us in our workspaces, in our personal lives, and in our homes. And then ask yourselves, does the public good for that outweigh what one person with a megaphone might have to say outside a police department? And consider the vast resources that you put into the noise issues in this county, because it is a serious issue and you need to be paying attention to what's going on. It is wasting our tax money. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, that concludes public comment regarding items 4, 7, 9, and 10 through 17, which are unanimously approved, Peggy, by Supervisor Simitian and I. Again, 4 was just handled, so we move to 5, which is a report, to receive a report. This is a non-action item. Receive a report from the Department of Planning and Development relating to recent activities at Stevens Creek Quarry and Lehigh Permanente Quarry. And Jacqueline, before we turn to you and or your staff members for that, I've got half a dozen cards. I'm going to call these individuals up to say what they wish to say regarding item number 5. And then, depending on what is said, you or your staff may wish to address some of those things during that speak. So I'm going to call up your names. Each of you can come on up, and once you get there, if you'll just give your name is fine, but in whatever order. Whoever gets there first can start first. Erica Guerrera, Doris Velasquez, Ging Late, sorry if I mispronounced that one, Late maybe, Jason Voss, Eddie Trong, and Philip Albanese, which I can do because I'm half Italian. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Chairman Simitian, Supervisor Wasserman. My name is Erica Guerra. I am the Director of Environmental Land Management Resources for Lehigh Hanson in the West Region. I appreciate being given the opportunity to provide Lehigh's perspective on the report to be presented today by the Planning Department. This is in regards to the reclamation plan that Lehigh submitted, the reclamation plan amendment that Lehigh submitted back in November. First, you should know that Lehigh has modified its application with the county to remove the alternative haul road that Lehigh proposed to build. As modified, the application request to amend the reclamation plan will only cover the existing access road. We did this in light of the county's notice of violation to Stevens Creek Quarry. Until the county allows the Stevens Creek Quarry to receive a road coming from Lehigh, there is no reason for us to construct an alternative haul road. The reclamation plan application to incorporate the existing access road will continue per the county's mandate. There is no question that Lehigh has a vested right to sell aggregate. Aggregate production has been a part of mining operations since the 1940s or earlier. Aggregate production and sales are an integral part of our operation. The City of Cupertino suggests that we do not have the right to sell unprocessed aggregate. This is a distinction that does not exist. Aggregate is just a generic term for sellable rock. We have the right to sell aggregate in whatever form the market or our customers require. The staff report suggests that aggregate composed of greenstone and greywacke is a new expanded use. This is not correct. Again, aggregate is not made from any specific rock type. Any rock type found at the quarry can be used for aggregate. The amount we have sold to Stevens Creek Quarry is well within the volumes of aggregate that we have sold historically. The City of Cupertino states that Lehigh operations are causing a nuisance.
Each person has to have the same amount of time.
That's the main point. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good morning. My name is Gina Leite, and I am the Reliability Manager at Permanente. I am a resident of Santa Clara County, and I have a husband who is a retired law enforcement officer. I have been with the company for 2 years, and it has given me a means to support my household since I'm the breadwinner in my family, and also a career. Please consider not only the future of our jobs, but the future of the entire county of Santa Clara as you decide today. Please consider all the cement and aggregate needed for the project to build BART to downtown San Jose, the projects for the SB1 transportation bill for the county, the affordable homes you want to build, and the Proposition B projects, which amounts to $1 billion, I believe. Even in Cupertino, to rebuild the Valco Shopping Center will take about 1 million cubic yards of concrete, which we need cement and we need aggregates for that. Imagine shipping all that concrete from other parts of the state, from the country, or even bringing it from other countries. If these materials are locally sourced, it produces more jobs for local residents, and it's better for the environment because it can be locally regulated. I urge you supervisors to support our jobs, our families, our 80-plus years of existence. We are part of the Cupertino City legacy and also for the community. Thank you very much.
And everybody, we have a policy here, and if you haven't been at the chambers before, that we refrain from any applause or any booing, because we want anybody who comes up to the podium that may have a similar or dissimilar perspective not to feel intimidated in any way to share their thoughts. So I ask you to respect that. Please, ma'am.
Good morning. My name is Doris Velasquez. I am a Lehigh employee. I'm the HR manager for the plant. And supervisors, the new catchphrase Sweeping California is locally sourced. Food for restaurants and grocery stores. Why? Because it's better environmentally. Well, for almost 100 years, Lehigh Permanente has been the local source of a raw material that has no substitute. Nothing substantial gets built without cement or concrete. It can't be replaced. And because it's locally sourced, it travels less distances, is regulated locally, it employs local residents, and is better for the environment. Less greenhouse gases created. And one more relevant reason you should want to keep the Lehigh plant open, it generates over $4 million annually in sales tax dollars. That goes away if you allow these Cupertino politicians to shut us down. I ask my fellow workers to stand. And what you see are brothers, fathers and sons, husbands and wives. Lehigh Permanente has been able to allow these hardworking individuals to send their kids to colleges, to purchase homes. Supervisors, we ask that you please stand with us and our families, not for selfish, small-minded Cupertino politicians. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Jason Voss. I'm Operations Manager at Stevens Creek Quarry. I am also a fourth generation miner at Stevens Creek Quarry. My great-grandfather, Tony, started mining our family's land in Cupertino in the 1930s. Our family's land, our business, and our union employees have produced the aggregate that has built Silicon Valley into what it is today. Our aggregate products are used directly for building, housing, transportation infrastructure, environmental remediation projects, schools, parks, and much more. Locally sourced aggregate is the most environmentally sound way to build and maintain our county and city's infrastructure. We are operating within the bounds of our use permit and our 2002 mediated agreement with Santa Clara County.
Thank you. If you can hold up one second. Peggy, can you drop that timer? Let's just go to 1:45, and we'll pretend all that was in 15 seconds.
I'm about done.
Okay, go ahead.
Our company, Stevens Creek Quarry, has supported this local community for many years. We have grown up in this local community from when it was orchards in the city of Cupertino to what it is today. And we plan to continue to support this community into the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Board President Simidian and Supervisor Wasser, members of the committee. My name is Eddie Trong. I'm the Director of Government Relations for the Silicon Valley Organization. We are the region's Chamber of Commerce representing the interests of over 1,400 businesses and our 300,000 employees supporting economic development and jobs growth within this region. I'm here today specifically to speak in support of Lehigh Hanson's mining application and for the application to review the mining road. I want to frame my comments in two direct ways that relates to this application. First is the idea that this mining road has existed for decades as a way for Lehigh Hanson to get supplies quickly and efficiently between two quarries and to get more construction materials and aggregates into the market. The second piece I want to also mention is that from the larger business community's perspective and why we think this is important is that in the last several years, we have passed a number of state transportation measures. We have passed all kinds of affordable housing measures, and all of those projects require a cheap or relatively low-cost source of construction materials and aggregates. That comes from the Permanente plant. That comes from being one of the largest local providers of construction materials in Northern California. And so I urge this committee and the Board of Supervisors to really think carefully about not driving unnecessary costs onto the cost of construction materials that could actually fulfill the promise we made to voters in getting transportation projects and affordable housing produced in this entire region. Thank you for your comments, and I look forward to speaking with you more about the broader impacts this has with not only with the business community, but the entire region as a whole. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Philip Albanese. I'm the COO for Joseph J. Albanese Construction. We are a local Santa Clara-based construction company specializing in demolition, earthwork, structural and site concrete pumping, and saw cutting services. Joseph J. Albanese was founded by my grandfather in 1955. Like so many organizations in this valley, we have been fortunate to be located in arguably the world's epicenter for innovation, a place where human talent, vision, and determination is continuously combined to create. Create is what this valley has done through a tremendous spectrum of industries, from tech to medicine to robotics and now cars with robotics. It's incredible to see what continues to be produced here. And what is ultimately responsible, and this is all what's ultimately responsible for our company's story. Starting with pouring driveways and sidewalks to now building some of the largest companies around. We are a union contractor that employ up to 1,000 people and families, most of whom live locally. I'm very proud to say that we've put more than 8 million man-hours of work since 2014 alone. So many variables exist in and ultimately impact the construction industry, and of all of them, because of the exceptional growth, all of them because of the exceptional growth, are understandably becoming more and more challenging to come by. Most critical to this piece, outside of people, of course, are materials. Local resources such as Lehigh and Stevens Creek Quarry, both of which have been operating for decades, provide tremendous value in this valley's development and construction cycle. Please understand that local is the key. It reduces traffic congestion and trucking due to shorter hauling distances, this is both critical elements to limiting the environmental impact as well. Furthermore, being local inevitably reduces costs, which in turn allows progress and jobs to remain here locally. Please understand that I'm clearly just one person speaking, but that I speak for many that rely on the construction and development industry. Having this material sourced locally dramatically impacts the feasibility and future service demands that this valley's growth depends on, while at the same time mitigating the negative environmental impacts.
Thank you, Mr. Albanese.
Thank you.
I have no other cards on this item, so we'll close the public portion of that. And Jacqueline? Yeah, we'll take other cards. For any other items, we need all the cards submitted prior to the public starting to speak so that we know how many minutes to allocate to each speaker based on the number of cards received. If somebody wants to speak on this item, please come forward now so we can keep this moving. Got a lot of people who want to get back to work.
Sorry about that. My name is Paula Wallace. I'm a resident of Cupertino. Lehigh has been there a very long time. It employs a lot of people, and it does a great service in the buildings trade. We don't deny that. What we'd like to see is for the board to really take heed of your great staff that is looking at issues up there and coming to quick resolutions on these violations that happen. The so-called small-minded politicians in Cupertino were elected by the residents of Cupertino. That's well over 60,000 people. So this is not a small issue for us. We live right next door to Lehigh. We'd like to see some real changes up there that recognize what we as the local residents that live close by to this facility undergo every day. Trucks on our roads that really clog, that make it difficult for bicyclists to get to school and back, the fugitive dust that blows off onto properties, the air emissions that come out of their facility. I think we can all work together to reduce all those issues and keep good localized jobs. When we look at importing cement from other countries, China, for example, a recent report came out to say China and India have actually better cement plants that emit far, far less emissions into the atmosphere than California cement plants and the United States cement plants. We can do better, and we're thrilled to have a planning commission and a board of supervisors that are going to help us to really get on top of this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker? Perhaps Rhonda Fry?
Hi, it's Rhoda. Wow.
Rhoda.
We would be better off. Our air would be better off if we imported cement from China. What about that? So, the Mining Safety and Health Administration has characterized Lehigh as a company that uses an egregious record of violation as a cost of doing business. Just look at all the fines they've received, many of which they've fought, just like they're fighting you right now. If Lehigh doesn't care about the health and safety of its employees, what are the chances are that they care about air pollution, water pollution, and county regulations? For the first time in many years, county planning has attempted to truly enforce regulations, and now you and I are being intimidated. Now, regarding aggregate, I agree with the county that Lehigh doesn't have the right to sell unprocessed aggregate. You know, it's got fines, and the fines go into our storm drains and into our air. We had so much air pollution when the trucks were on the roads. It's the fines that spill on our street. Construction aggregate is washed. So it's a very different product. Yeah, they had the same names, and it makes everybody confused. But don't be confused. One is a raw material, one is a product. It's like comparing cows and beef. So, you know, why do we seem mad? I know we seem mad a lot. You know, they put in this new stack, and they promised we'd have no noise with the new stack. And I actually talked with some of the Lehigh personnel, and they said, no, there wouldn't be any new noise. And then hundreds of people in Cupertino suffered from the noise. I slept on the couch trading a backache to lack of sleep. But then the county said, oh, all you were hearing was crickets. It took years to have the noise resolved. So anyway, please regulate fast, and thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you. Mark Harrison? And this will be our final speaker.
Good morning, Supervisor Smitty and Commissioners. My name is Sean Hungerford, misidentified as Mark Harrison.
There's a microphone built in. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm an outside counsel for Lehigh Southwest Cement Company. Just a couple of additional points. First, the city of Cupertino raised in a recent letter whether or not Stevens Creek Quarry was processing aggregate for Lehigh, and we just want to make it clear that that's not correct. Stevens Creek Quarry is a customer of Lehigh's, just like a lot of other customers. They purchase material from Lehigh, and they use it for their own purposes. Just want to make that point clear. Secondly, the city of Cupertino questioned whether or not the traffic between the two quarries is a nuisance. If that were the case, it would be just as concerning to Lehigh and Stevens Creek, I'm sure, as anyone here on this panel. So we had a call in December with representatives of the Sheriff's Department as well as representatives of the city of Cupertino and the Planning Department. It was made clear by the Sheriff's Department then that traffic wasn't a major problem and that it was more of a perception issue as far as traffic on the roads than a reality issue. So we're continuing to monitor that situation, continuing to listen to the Sheriff's Department. And that brings me to the final point. This evening at 6 o'clock at the Juniper Hotel, Lehigh is hosting an open house. So if there are questions about Lehigh's traffic, Lehigh's activities, aggregate sales, perfect opportunity for people in the community, people on this commission to visit and ask those questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And for the record, you are not Mark Harrison. You said you're Sean.
Correct. I'm not Mark Harrison. I'm Sean Hungerford.
Spell your last name, please.
Hungerford.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that's our final speaker on this item. We'll turn to Jack Onciano, our Director of Plan and Development.
Thank you. I'm going to go down to make the presentation from the dais.
Got it. And Michael Rossi, County Council, joined. Thank you.
Don? Yeah. Good morning. Jacqueline Onciano, Chief Director of Planning and Development of Santa Clara County, and with me is Michael Rossi. We're here to just present on the status of where we are with the Lehigh Quarry, and that was the request from just to receive a report from the Department of Planning and Development relating to recent activities at Stevens Creek Quarry and Lehigh Permanente Quarry. I won't go through the background information that's outlined in the staff report unless the committee so desires, but I will start with the summer of 2018. During the summer of 2018, unknown to the county at that time, Lehigh Permanente had illegally widened an existing PG&E easement. It was an easement that was a maintenance road that internally connected Lehigh Permanente to Stevens Creek Quarry, and this was done without proper permits and land entitlements to do so. Following that time, Lehigh and Stevens Creek, they began to have trucks passing through this road on this roadway. In June of 2018, county inspectors had first discovered the existence of this unpermitted road, and on August 17th of 2018, we issued a notice of violation requiring Lehigh to cease use of the illegally graded Hall Road unless and until they applied for and obtained a reclamation plan amendment. On November 26th, of 2018, Lehigh Permanente submitted an amendment, a reclamation plan amendment to the county that indicated the widening of PG&E Road would not be used for future hauling and instead identified an alternative proposed internal road connecting the two quarries. As of the date of the report, we had planned on issuing an incomplete letter, but the report was prepared prior to the letter being ready. We have, since that time, the draft letter, incomplete letter to Lehigh was prepared. It was to be issued yesterday. What the public and the committee members have received is that draft of that letter because at 4:36, we received a request and I'll focus your attention to what was passed out on the dais. We received a request from Lehigh to withdraw their application, and it states, Minor Reclamation Plan Amendment Withdrawal of November 2018 application. And they were writing on behalf of Lehigh Southwest Cement Company with respects to the Permanente Quarry. On November 9th, 2018, Lehigh filed an application with Santa Clara County for a minor amendment to the Permanente Quarry Reclamation Plan. The application proposes to amend the reclamation plan to incorporate a proposed rock plant haul road, which has not yet been built. This is the alternative road that I spoke of earlier. And an existing access road, which Lehigh, this is their language, improved in 2018. Please be advised that effective immediately, Lehigh withdraws and modifies its November 9, 2018 application as it pertains to the proposed rock plant haul road. The county should, going forward, process the application as a minor amendment for the existing access road only. Lehigh will provide, the county with revised application materials that reflect this modification. I read that because one of the speakers spoke and said that they had submitted the modification. We have not received that modification to date that I am aware of, unless perhaps they went upstairs before this meeting and submitted it. But this letter, actually it's an email, was received Wednesday, February 20th at 4:36 p.m. On February 15th, a notice of violation letter was submitted to Stevens Creek Quarry. The county's February 15th notice of violation identified the importation and processing and resale of aggregate on parcels. There are two parcels on Stevens Creek, parcels A and parcels B. The resale of the aggregate was on parcel B of Stevens Creek Quarry as a violation of the county zoning ordinance. So we have two different permits or two different operations happening in Stevens Creek Quarry. We issued this notice of violation. We outlined how they can proceed, understanding that there was a connection between Lehigh and Stevens Creek Quarry. We made it clear that if Stevens Creek Quarry did not cease the importation, refining, and reselling of the aggregate from Lehigh Permanente relative to the notice of violation, they would be subject to fines of they could be subject to fines up to $1,000 per day. Where we stand today is we have received this letter from Lehigh withdrawing that application. Stevens Creek Quarry has received the notice of violation with instructions for how to proceed, and we are before you today with this status update, and we're available to answer any questions that you may have. This concludes staff's presentation, unless you have additional questions.
Thank you, Jack. Supervisor Simidian.
Ms. Anciano, how long have you been at the county now?
I have been at the county for 10 weeks.
Welcome to Santa Clara County.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure I understand the current state of play. As I think you know, all of this activity takes place in my district, the 5th Supervisorial District. So I have been trying to stay abreast of the circumstances as they develop day to day. The incomplete letter that you were planning to send was with respect not to what I'm going to call the PG&E road or easement, but with respect to an application for a new road. Do I have that part right? I'm just trying to keep track of which documents apply to which pieces of work.
If I may, it addresses both because they're interrelated. So that letter is on the dais as well. But this letter, the purpose of this letter was relative to the application for the reclamation plan amendment, yes. In the letter, it speaks to both roads as was outlined in the application that was submitted from Lehigh. And if I can just point your attention to the letter on page
Are we talking about the letter of February 20th? From
Yes,
Santa
it's a
Clara County?
draft letter. Yes,
Right.
sir. The letter from February 20th, excuse me, it's dated February 20th. It has draft in the center of it.
Got it.
It speaks to two different roads, and one road is a utility haul road identified in the letter, and the other road is identified I just want to point you to the right place, is a rock plant haul road. One is identified as a utility haul road, and the other is a rock plant haul road. Now, that language is reflective from the application that was submitted by Lehigh.
And is it the utility haul road that is what I'm calling the PG&E road, just to be clear?
That is correct.
And the rock plant road was a proposed
alternate road.
Alternate road, right? Okay.
As I understand.
Thank you. We got different names for different roads, and I'm just trying to make sure we're all talking about the same thing at the same time. Well, so the next action by your department is what?
We will receive the application from Lehigh relative to the memo, the email that you have where it says Lehigh withdraws and modifies its November 9th, 2018 application, and they will provide the county with revised application materials. We will then review those revised application materials and process forward a reclamation plan amendment. At this point, the department is not making a determination whether it'll be minor or major. We need to see what they're proposing.
Thank you. And I'm just, again, forgive me, Ms. Chairman, I'm just trying to make sure I understand the state of play. The language is a little bit unclear to me, and forgive me if I'm the only one to whom it is unclear, but the language from Ms. Guerra says withdraw, but then it also says modify. Right. So that would suggest, that there's essentially a new application that's coming but hasn't yet arrived. Is that where we are?
Well, that's what remains to be seen. We, as you see, we received this letter yesterday at 4:36. To my understanding, we have not received an application or modification to date.
So there was an application. We believe it's been withdrawn. We believe the applicant is going to modify the withdrawn application, turn it in again as a now new application, and that will effectively start the process from the beginning yet again, yes?
Well, we have to discuss that because I'm going to speak to County Council because we have an agreement that was why the original materials were submitted. So are we okay for that application?
Is this the compliance agreement we're talking about? Or is this a different agreement? And I understand if there are things that you can't talk about in a public session because they're legal matters.
I'm going to say you're correct. We will start that application when they submit.
And then one of the questions that you will have to address yet again is whether the new application, or what the applicant is calling is the modified application, is complete, because that's the starting point, is to have a complete application, yes?
That is correct. What we had was originally Lehigh had submitted materials by a due date, and our analysis of the materials that were submitted was that they did not address all of the issues that had been outlined, but they met the due date.
All right. So and the reason I'm asking all these questions is because my office and I get questions, as I know your office does, and I just want to make sure that I am able to give both a clear and an accurate answer. And I think the clear and accurate answer is we had an application. It's since been withdrawn. We expect a new application if it hasn't already arrived. It'll get reviewed, and one of the first threshold questions is the application complete, because you can't review it until it's complete. Is that kind of how it goes?
That is correct. Is the application complete? And then we'll have to look at the materials that is submitted. Yes.
All right. Now, meanwhile, while all that's going on, we have the issue of the truck traffic that has caused some consternation out in the community. And that truck traffic, which involves folks going back and forth on city streets, as I understand it, between Lehigh and Stevens Creek, was the basis for the city of Cupertino's 11-page single-spaced letter, which, just for the record, I have read word for word a couple of times. They expressed their position on a host of matters, including a host of legal matters. And then that letter has generated response from attorneys representing both Lehigh and Stevens Creek. And just for the record, those letters were about 5 or 6 pages each, and I've read both of those letters word for word a couple of times. And I think it's fair to say that the Lehigh and Stevens Creek legal counsel have a different view of the legal matters than the city of Cupertino, at the risk of understatement here. So my understanding is that your department, planning, has been in consultation with county counsel's office, and that while all that's going on, that a notice of violation has been issued with respect to the truck traffic on city streets at Stevens Creek. Is that an accurate recollection? And if I'm not, or if I've been imprecise in my language, please feel free to correct me, because I don't want people leaving with a misunderstanding.
Supervisor, if I may, the county's notice of violation does not directly address the traffic on city streets. It addresses the permissible use of Stevens Creek Quarry, and the county has determined that Stevens Creek Quarry exceeded its permissible use. That's the basis for the notice of violation. We've asked them to stop that use unless and until that use is permitted.
But, and I thank you, I get the distinction and I understand why it's important, at least I think I do. That being said, for folks who are concerned about the truck traffic, whether it's folks in the community who see it as a problem or folks at the quarries who see it as the only way to do business at the moment, the practical effect or impact of the notice of violation is that it puts an end to the truck traffic by virtue of saying that the activity at the quarry site is not consistent with the law. Am I on the right track still?
Yes.
Okay. Here's a threshold question, and forgive me, I just, the notice of violation went out recently. Do we know if the truck traffic has in fact stopped?
No.
No, okay. So, just a thing I would ask is, could we please monitor what's happening with the truck traffic? Because if the truck traffic is indicative of whether or not the behavior has stopped, which was the basis of the notice of violation, I just think we need to be on top of that. And if that's the easiest way to be on top of that, then I would just ask that we be on top of that. For the moment, Mr. Chairman, I don't have questions. I do have some comments, and is this the time? Thank you.
Please, it is the time.
First, a thank you to you, Mr. Chairman, for agendizing the item. And I asked that the item be agendized because I thought that there was a lot of paper moving back and forth and a lot of conversations taking place. And I thought we ought to have the conversations in public to the greatest possible degree so that all of the parties, including members of the public, but also the affected quarries, could sort of see and hear, in an open public process what's happening and why it's happening. Essentially, and thank you to both County Council and the Planning Department for making yourselves available over the last couple of months to help sort through these issues. Essentially what we've got is we've got a very complicated set of federal, state, and local laws and regulations that govern the conduct of all the parties. In a perfect world, which would be a place we don't live or work, but in a perfect world, I think we would all agree that we don't have heavy activities of this sort in close proximity or immediately adjacent to residential neighborhoods. But decisions were made in decades past and generations past. We do, and there we are. Similarly, we had a set of decisions made around vested rights and around the reclamation plan that were made prior to my time on the board. Supervisor Wasserman, I think you were here when those decisions were made in 2011 and 12. But, for those who are trying to figure out where I'm coming from on this issue, I arrived, they're in place, there we go. They've been litigated. My recollection is that that litigation's been resolved, and so they are what they are. And we all, emphasize all, have to live and work under those regulations. In a perfect world, again, a place where we don't live or work, we wouldn't have a dozen different federal, state, and local agencies with jurisdiction and responsibility, because That makes it that much harder, frankly, for us to coordinate, collaborate, and do all this in a sensible way, but that's the challenge we have, so that's what we're trying to do. What I would say to anyone who spoke today or who was watching is we've got a set of allegations by the city about what is and isn't lawful. We've got a rebuttal to that from the two quarries. Our planning department and our county counsel's office have reviewed them and have reached a determination about what is and isn't allowed. That's the basis for the notice of violation, and presumably that'll be the basis for the evaluation of anything that's submitted with respect to a reclamation plan amendment. You know, we've got folks who argue the economic importance of the resource, fair enough. We've got folks in the community who argue the adverse impacts, fair enough. But at the end of the day, you know, I think we can, you know, it's the risk of stating the obvious. We can all agree everybody's got to follow the law. And that includes our county, that includes the quarries, that includes the cement plant operation. And I think, you know, all I can ask as a member of the board is that the planning department and the county counsel's office do their jobs, which they are doing, and we'll see how all this works out. But it's going to be a struggle to sort through all this because it's complicated and the stakes are high, both in terms of community impact and in terms of the economic activity in the two quarries. But I think, you know, my exhortation to you is stay on it. Please do the job as quickly as you possibly can, consistent with doing a thoughtful, thorough, and fair job for all parties. And I know sometimes that means it's going to take some time. I should mention that Ms. Onciano, and I think you know some of this now, but I just want to recap. When I came back on the board in 2013, after having been away for a while, I told my staff, Supervisor Wasserman, Lehigh's going to be with us on the first day, and they're going to be with us on the last day. It is just the nature of having an operation of this scope and size in proximity to residential development, and that's going to always be a challenge. There are always going to be certain tensions. There's always going to be certain frictions. I can tell you in the 6 years that I've been back, Ms. Onciano, that has been the case. We have, I think, made some progress. There were some things I asked for after I spent maybe my first year back sort of sorting through the issues. And, you know, what I did was approach both the county executive and your predecessors and say, look, I think it would be helpful if we were up on site more often. And so my request was that we have somebody up on site at Lehigh on at least sort of a monthly basis, just to have boots on the ground, eyes on the operation. That's been happening as I understand it. I think that's been to the good, and I appreciate it. The second thing that I thought would be helpful was that we actually serve as the convener for the multiple regulatory bodies and try and pull them together maybe a couple of times a year so everybody was in the room at the same time talking about what was happening on the site. My understanding is that that's been happening, and in fact, I think we had one of those meetings just within the last week, and I had a staff member who sat in at that event. So thank you. I think that's been helpful. As mundane as it may sound, I asked that the website be upgraded and improved. It has been. Not saying it can't be improved more, but I think it's a more useful tool now for people to understand what's going on and to access relevant documents. So I would say thank you for that. My office and I did a review of the conditions of approval and discovered one relatively modest variance, which was that a $75,000 performance bond that was supposed to be in place wasn't in place. We contacted the county counsel's office and the folks at Lehigh. That was addressed very quickly, very promptly. The bond is now in place, as I understand it. The other thing that I thought was going to be helpful and important, and I think it has proven to be so, is to have an annual meeting where the regulating bodies all come together and answer questions from the community. And we're about to do that, Supervisor Wasserman, for the fourth time. We've shifted from a fall schedule to a February schedule, but we're about to do that a fourth time in a couple of weeks, February the 28th in Cupertino from 7 to 9, if I remember correctly, at the community room there. And what that has done for the 150 or so folks who've come is allowed them to get their questions answered directly from the regulators, including folks from our planning department. And I think both provides them with the community with a greater sense of confidence that somebody's on it, but perhaps equally important, make sure that the regulators understand what the concerns of the community are by virtue of what the questions are. And then finally, over the last couple of years, my office and I have had a practice of having a monthly phone call with leadership at Lehigh. That's usually something that a key member of my staff is responsible for. I only occasionally do the call myself, but it has been a way we've been able to make sure that we communicate on a regular basis the concerns that we're hearing from the community or from our own organization, and similarly that we hear from folks at the Lehigh facility what they're up to and what their plans are to the extent that they care to share. Now, all of that is to the good. I think we're in a better place than we were 6 years ago when I arrived. I want to say thank you again. That being said, we're in a moment now where all hell's broken loose, and I look forward to letting you, as our new planning director, see if you can get all this put back together again in a way that is lawful and that addresses legitimate community concerns and allows folks at the two facilities, Stevens Creek and Lehigh, to proceed with their business in a lawful and appropriate way. Is there anything my office or I can do to be helpful to you and or County Council as we go forward?
At this time, I would say thank you.
Great answer. Thank you. I appreciate that. Then what I'm going to do is say thank you for the presentation. Mr. Chairman, if this is the appropriate time, I'm happy to move receipt of the report for the record. And I would ask that we bring this back for a follow-up report. This is February, April. Does that work for you, Mr. Chairman?
Sure. 2 months you want to do?
If that, yeah, I don't want to turn it into a monthly thing unless that's necessary. But I think particularly on a matter of timely importance like this, bringing it back in a couple of months will both allow us to hear what the status is, make sure that whatever the status is, the whole public's heard.
And Jacqueline, there may or may not be anything of significance to report at that time, but I think the supervisor's given a very good oversight, very comprehensive, and all the efforts of all the people and all the agencies and all that is taking place, all that is scheduled to take place. And I will second the motion to receive the report. And that concludes item number 5.
Thank you very much. And thank you to everyone who came to offer their comments today. Much
We'll give you all just a minute if you want to get up now, or you can stay for the next several hours and hear more of this. We'll give a couple of minutes for the boardrooms to clear, and then we will continue with item number 6. And Douglas, where are you? There you are. We'll start with you as the speaker in just a couple of minutes. Please define extra help and explain why this is of concern to the SEIU. We can do that. Doug, all right with you if I read your question, or do you want to come up and read your question? Okay, submitted by Doug Muirhead of Morgan Hill to the county. Says, please define extra help and explain why this is of concern to SEIU. Can we turn that over to you?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Good answer.
First of all, good morning, Supervisor Simidian. Good morning, Supervisor Waston. Members of the committee, my name is Mitch Bielesbach. I am with the Employee Services Agency's Labor Relations Department, and I am joined by my colleague, Kate Pham. Obviously, going off script from the report, there is a question about defining extra help. Extra help is codified in the ordinance. Off the top of my head, I want to say it is A25-175, I believe, but we want to double check that. But the ordinance allows the county to hire people in an uncoated, unclassified position for up to 1,040 hours in the fiscal year. and that would need to be in one classification in one budget unit. Now, the agreement between the county, the labor agreement between the county and SEIU Local 521 has some additional provisions in that. For example, if there was to be an extension, it needs to go to the Board of Supervisors for approval, and an extension for an individual could be no more than 540 hours, or 520 hours, forgive me, off the top of my head. In terms of why it's important to 521, I mean, as of course, I would presume they have an interest, as the county does, in ensuring we comply with our labor agreements, and the county certainly strives to comply with the labor agreements, and we do comply with them. But I can't speak for Local 521 as to why they would find it important.
Fair enough. I'll take over, and then we'll move on to your presentation. But Doug, the extra help is the term the county uses. It's basically the hours quoted, the 1,000 whatever, is half-time. And our contracts with the unions allow for X amount of half-time, and once it gets beyond that, they want them to become full-time union members. So that's where the concern is. You're very welcome. Thank you. Do I have anybody else wishing to speak on item number 6? Seeing none, we'll close the public speaking portion of that. And Supervisor, I don't have any questions myself. Is there any further presentation that you wish to mention? I know I took you off script. That wasn't your presentation. Do you have anything you wish to share that's not in the report?
No, sir.
Okay. Supervisor Committee, and the only action is to receive the semi-annual report
I
from
will
the
so
ESA.
move.
You so move?
So move.
So move. I will second.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Get an early start to lunch.
Outstanding.
Thank you. Thank you both very much for being here. We'll move on to, excuse me 1 second as I grab my agenda. I think we've still got 7. No, 7 was handled in consent. So we move on to item number 8. And item 8 is to receive the annual report from the Office of Sustainability relating to progress on the environmental stewardship goals, responsibility, and climate action programs, and the Sustainability Master Plan through December 10th of last year. I'll turn mine over to here, and I've got Susan. Welcome. Thank you. Good morning. And you're joined by? Chairman Wasserman, Supervisor Simidian, and members. Check your mic if your mic's on.
I always have that. Is it on? Now it's on.
There you go.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Chairman Wasserman, Supervisor Simidian, and members of the committee. Susan Gilbert-Miller, Director, Office of Sustainability. Joining me today are 2 valued partners in this, Ms. Susanna Mercado from Facilities and Fleet, and from my staff, Mr. Naresh Dugal, who's the Integrated Pest Management Program Manager. The Office of Sustainability is submitting the 2018 Annual Sustainability and Climate Action Report, which, as you say, is on the environmental stewardship goals, county programs to implement those goals, and the Sustainability Master Plan progress. With your permission, I'd like to make a brief statement before taking your questions.
Please.
Thank you. The county has made great strides in sustainability over the last year. I want to acknowledge the Board of Supervisors, administration, all the county departments and their staff who have worked with the Office of Sustainability to make this progress happen. We developed a coherent vision and plan approved by the board for creating a foundation for advancing county sustainability and climate defense. The Sustainability Master Plan and Management System organizes the county departments in their initiatives for improved collaboration and implements mechanisms to monitor programs. Now that we have our Sustainability Master Plan revised contract in place, my office has been moving forward in meeting with key county departments to identify how their work impacts and supports improved sustainability performance. We're looking at how we can all leverage each other's expertise for better coordination and collaboration. We've met with Facilities and Fleet, Public Health, Roads and Airports, the Consumer and Environmental Protection Agency, Procurement, and as of yesterday, all the offices of the Social Equity Group. Already we're seeing the results of this effort with interdepartmental collaboration for a new solid waste management agreement that's aligned to advancing the environmental stewardship goal number 5, which is diverting 100% of solid waste from landfill, and the development of an ecologically based tree management guide that will form the basis for future department-specific tree management plans that are intended to assist with the goal of helping to build a comprehensive urban forest. And the Office of Emergency Services participating with a Urban Sustainability Directors Network project with the County of Alameda on wildfire smoke communications. It's to develop a toolkit for better communications to the public. We collaborated with Facilities and Fleet on developing a methodology for the county to assess how to make faster progress on environmental stewardship goal number 8, which is ensuring that 100% of county public fleet motor vehicles are electric or operate on alternative fuel. We completed a Driving to Net Zero grant project funded by the state to support the development of electric vehicle infrastructure and have made this information publicly available to all jurisdictions from our website. We partnered with former Vice President Al Gore's Climate Reality Leader project to advance the county's climate coalition and help birth the County of Santa Clara Climate Reality Leadership's chapter to develop community advocates who will work within our community on climate defense initiatives. From this partnership, there have already been 2 new members added to the coalition and dozens of other counties that are being reached out to and approached to also become members in the future. We collaborated with Facilities and Fleet to support the county in committing to 100% renewable electricity by December of 2019 and develop the strategy to achieve this. Already, all of the Silicon Valley clean energy accounts of the county are on 100% renewable electricity. Facilities and Fleet has been working to decrease county facility water use and has been working closely with the Office of Sustainability's Integrated Pest Management program on a landscape inventory and operational needs assessment that aims to produce further opportunities for water reduction. The Office of Sustainability continues to participate in the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Membership Agency Working Group and the BayREN programs and other regional and national programs that work on coordinating energy efficiency and greenhouse gas reduction initiatives and look at best practices that benefit our entire community. The board has adopted new initiatives such as the Diesel Free by 33 initiative to eliminate diesel fuel from county operations by 2033, and a new consolidated greenhouse gas emissions resolution that sets new targets for the county, and a requirement for annual county operation greenhouse gas emissions inventory, as well as a goal for carbon neutrality by 2045. FAF has been working on developing a robust transportation demand management program, which is important for helping us to achieve these greenhouse gas reduction goals, because commuting emissions from our employees are our largest source of emissions at this point. And finally, the Silicon Valley 2.0 online tool has been made fully publicly accessible, and that's a tool to help our community understand the county's risk from climate change and sea level rise and riverine flooding. So that's now publicly available to anybody. It's truly an honor and a privilege to work for this county that is positively advancing sustainability and climate defense. You're asked today to receive our annual report, and before doing so, we're happy to answer any questions you might have about the report or about any of our current efforts.
Thank you, Susan, Susanna, and Nurish for being here. Very, very good work, very good results. Very, very proud of what we're doing in this area. Thank you. I don't have any comments. And traditionally, although we have earlier today, I don't even make a motion to receive. But I'll turn to Supervisor Simitian and see if he's got some specifics.
Well, actually, I do have a quote from Theodore Roosevelt.
There we go.
Who said that the greatness of our nation was not a function of our resources, but the wisdom with which we used them. So, that's, I think, a fitting quote, since you gave me the opportunity for the work that this particular organization does. My only question has to do with personnel matter, which is that I understand there are some changes in the works, and that you're headed back to work with the federal government. Do I have my facts straight?
That is correct, sir.
And I'm just anxious, as I know you are, to make sure that the good work that you've begun and done while you were here doesn't slip in the transition. Do I understand you're going to work with us remotely somewhat while we're in the process of a transition?
Correct.
Could either you or Ms. Unciano or somebody just sort of tell us how that's going to work and over what period of time, just so I have a little better understanding? I'm not trying to poke my nose into anybody's personnel business. I am just trying to make sure that we're clear about how we move the work forward in a coherent way.
I think I could better provide that information in a written.
Okay,
sure,
offline to the board.
Happy to have an off-agenda report. Just
Sure.
And let me look to
That's what
both
we'll do.
you and Ms. Unciano and just say, as I said, just want to sort of understand how do we keep this good work going during a period of transition. And I know our hiring process here at the county can sometimes be a daunting one. So
And sometimes quite excellent.
and sometimes, but daunting even when it's excellent in terms of all of that. So thank you. Yes, I'll move that we received a report and ask for an off-agenda report on how we manage staff transitions while we keep the good work.
Unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And best wishes to you, and thank you for what
Thank
you've
you,
done.
sir.
Thank you.
Jack, anything else you wanted to add? Not at this time, and we look forward to receiving whatever you wish to share offline.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Supervisor, that concludes item number 8. We took care of 9 through 17 consent. So item 18 we're hitting as an adjournment, and I'm going to correct what again is posted in the adjournment. It will still be Friday. It will still be March 15th, but it will be at 9:30 a.m., and it will still be in these board chambers. And with that, meeting's adjourned. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.